Hey guys and girls, it's David with Beagles on Fire. Yesterday we finished up the series on types of dogs, and we're going to get into a series on equipment that we use as beaglers, but I'll start that probably tomorrow. I felt the need to be doing a different one today. I wanted to do one that's really not in a series. It's related kind of in a way to things that we use as beaglers, but it's something that I hope makes a lasting impression on you. It's made a lasting impression on me. I want to talk to you today about names. Name and names. And you say, well, what do you mean? Well, this has had an impact on me since I was a young guy. Little history of me. My parents were missionaries overseas in Germany. And before that, we were missionaries in Guam. And we had come back to a place in Chattanooga, Tennessee in the 8th grade. When I was in the 8th grade, I went to 8th grade in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Went there in the 9th grade. My parents left halfway through the 9th grade and went on to Germany. I came and joined them after the school year finished up and was over there my sophomore year. And I was big into sports, an athlete at the school and everything like that. So when I went to Germany, there were no kids my age. So I had 1 year where basically I had no one my age, didn't play any sports as far as school or anything like that, and really missed it. So convinced my father, probably much to the disappointment of my mother, that I needed to go back, wanted to go back to Chattanooga to finish out my last 2 years of high school. And he allowed me to do that. But sometimes you go to a church service and you think, who told the preacher about my whatever? Because, you know, the old saying, he stepped on my toes. He was preaching at me. Well, my father, if you knew him, he took a Sunday night service, and he'd been preaching on the book of Proverbs, and he took a Sunday night service and he preached straight at me before I went back to the Chattanooga, to the States, and to go to school. And he preached to me on the importance of your name. And you know, you think about people's names, their reputations, and what a lot of people don't care anything about their name. But this stuck with me and hit me right between the eyes when he talked to me about this and preached to me in front of everybody else. Way back then, I'm 56 years old, so this was back in 1981, 82, around in there. And the verse that he talked about was Proverbs 22:1. It says, a good name is rather to be chosen than riches. And you know, you think about that, and this is the stuff that he told me. He said, son, anybody can try to tarnish your name, tarnish your reputation, say bad things about you and slander your name, but you are the only one who can totally ruin your name. And you think about that. You think about when you think of someone's name, no matter who it is, typically they're known for something. You know, when you think of just different people that are famous, if you said the word, you know, Jay Leno, Jimmy Fallon, you think, oh, late night host. If you mention a name of, you know, Bon Jovi, John Bon Jovi, or, you know, Slash, or Axl Rose, or any of those, you think, oh, rock and roll star. You mention Michael Jordan, oh, greatest basketball player of all time. You mention Peyton Manning, awesome quarterback. You know, and then by the same token, you mention somebody like Charles Manson, oh, murderer. You mentioned somebody like Bernie Madoff, oh, con artist that had a Ponzi scheme. So we are all known for something. That image that pops in your mind the minute that you hear someone's name. And you know, in the beagle world, it's the same way in the dog world. You mention certain people's names. I'm not going to mention anybody's name, but you mention certain people's name and immediately people say, oh, that guy's a crook. That guy will rip you off. You mention certain kennel names, not where you want to go. You mention other people's kennels, like, now there you go, that's where you need to get to. And so I want to give you a little history behind where I came up with the name Beagles on Fire. See, I used to be a firefighter when I graduated high school. About a year after I went to college, and then after 1 year realized I wasn't really going to college for anything other than playing ball and chasing girls around. So I had to get a little more serious about what I was going to do. And I had a person that told me about the fire department, and so I went into the fire department. And that coupled with the fact that my father had been a pastor, and you hear about Baptist preachers, it's all fire and brimstone, and you need to be on fire for the Lord, and all these different sayings that you used to hear. So when I was sitting around thinking about what to call my kennel, I thought about it, and I thought, Beagles on Fire. That means they're doing what they need to do. When somebody says you need to be on fire for the Lord, it means you need to be burning bright. You need to be doing the right thing. And so I thought, you hear about a lot of people in the Beagle world, they talk about, man, you got some fire in the box. I'm not talking about them talking about dogs that come from here. It's just people talk about Beagles. Man, they're burning that rabbit up. Man, they're lighting the woods on fire. Man, smoking him. You got some fire in the box, all that different stuff. So I thought the name Beagles on Fire, and I looked it up, and it wasn't anything anybody had on anything out there for a website or anything. So I snatched it up and went with that. Got a logo, and wanted it to mean something. When you see this logo right here, Beagles on Fire, I don't want that just to be some colors and some letters. I want it to mean something. And you should want your name to mean something. You should want what you stand behind to mean something. And that's part of what's wrong with our country and everything else, that people don't care anything about their name. And you think about what just the colors red, white, and blue, what that used to mean to some generations in the past. That meant that you'd be willing to give your life. There was guys that actually went to raise a piece of fabric up in the air under gunfire to make sure people saw red, white, and blue fabric that's known as our flag. You see, the fabric is just that. It's just fabric. The flag itself is just fabric. That's not where the meaning is. It's what that stands for that causes people to stand up when it's presented. I know that's not popular with everyone these days. The way I was raised, when you saw the flag being raised, you stopped, you stood. We said Pledge of Allegiance to the flag when I went to school as a young man. When you're at sporting events and you heard the national anthem, you stood up. You didn't think about doing any kind of protesting and all that. You stood up out of respect for what that flag stood for, and for what those people who gave their life so that we could still fly that flag. And so you think of a flag, and the flag in of itself is just material, but it's what it stands for. So when I think of my logo, it's just a logo. It's just some words. But I want it to mean something. When people hear the name Beagles on Fire, I want them to have a good thought about that. Not, yeah, sorry dogs, or yeah, that guy will rip you off. When people hear the name David Ring, I want it to mean something to them. And you should want your name to mean something to them. And sometimes when people name dogs, they name them something without any thought as to whether it even matches or not. And that's their business, There's dogs that got plain names. Then there's dogs sometimes, but you got to take your time sometimes when you name a dog to make sure the name fits. What does the name mean? To some people, a dog named Lady, if you know their particular dog named Lady, or their dog named Joe, or their, Joe just a regular everyday name, Lady's everyday name, red, blue, all these different names you hear dogs called. But when you hear a certain name called, like those that came, Sandy's a very common name. But when I bring up the word Sandy from dogs I've had in the past, people that knew Sandy, they immediately think of awesome rabbit dog. But when people name dogs, I laugh sometimes. People will name a dog as a puppy. We're going to name that one Boomer. And its mouth is really soft. Doesn't really match the dog at all. Now, that's just personal preference. I wouldn't want to name a dog Go-Getter and it would sit at my feet, or the real deal, for real, and the dog's nothing, just a pack dog. I want the names to mean something, but I'm going to have some names that are just going to be, common everyday names. But it's up to that dog and how well that dog does as to whether that name jumps off the page at me. There's nothing special in the name necessarily of a dog, but it's what the name represents, and it's what you think of when you hear that dog's name. And, speaking of names, the Bible also says something else about names. It says in Philippians 2, verse 9 and 10, "For this reason also God highly exalted him and bestowed on him the name which is above every name, so that at the name of Jesus every knee will bow, of those who are in heaven and on earth and under the earth." The name Jesus is well known all over the world. And when people hear the name Jesus, they have something that comes to their mind, even in this mixed up world. Those who have been taught Sunday school and faith, they say Jesus. Who is Jesus? Most people would say the Son of God, the one who died on the cross. There's a lot of different variances of what you might get, but they all point to that one thing. He's known for that. And he's the one that we can call on, and his name means something. And I just hope that you will realize the importance of a name, because the name that you are given, if you know what it means, some people go around never knowing what their name means. I was named David. I know David means beloved. And hopefully I live up to that, and that I'm beloved by a lot of people. I know that I've been very fortunate. I've met some really great people. But when you shake hands with somebody, pre-COVID obviously, but when you meet someone, you have a first impression that you make on them. Now, it can be good or it can be bad, but it's up to you as to whether someone takes your name and can slander it. You see, if a person out there says, "David's selling sorry dogs, he lied to me, ripped me off," maybe I did, maybe I didn't. You wouldn't know, really. It's just one person. But if you heard that over and over again, the old saying, where there's smoke, there's fire. So that's what we mean by only you can ruin your reputation. You see, people can try to slander you. You get people that are jealous. You get people that are competitors. They want to say things bad about you. But the truth always comes forward, and it always comes to the top. And so if you are doing what you're supposed to do, all the lies will be just that, and they'll go to the side, and your name will stay good. But it's up to you to keep your name right. And I'm amazed at what people's names mean to them. Remember that first verse I started with? It says a good name is rather to be chosen than riches. Yet people would sell somebody a dog for $200 and lie to them and ruin their name for $200. My name means far more to me than that. And I don't want to be one that's selling my name out for nothing. And I just want everybody to think about names today. It just hit me hard this morning when I was thinking about different things. It's been on my mind about doing different stuff. And I just want everybody to realize that we all need to go out and make a name for yourself. I don't mean that we all got to become popular. We all got to go out here and, when I hear the term make a name for yourself, what I think about is get your name out there right. Make a name for yourself. Make your name mean something. And you can do that without ever being super popular. You can do that just by living your life the way you should. And that's what we need to teach our kids. We need to teach our kids and our grandkids, not only do you have a first name, but you have a last name. The last name is your family name. If you're a guy, you'll always have that name unless you go out here to legally change it. If you're a girl, you're going to marry and you probably drop that name and go with the other name. It's just the way our tradition goes. But what we need to be doing is making sure that our family name means something. And you say, well, I didn't have any control over that before I came. You're right. Sometimes you're born into a good family that has a good name in the community. Sometimes you're born on what people call the other side of the track, so to speak. And, you can start to break the chain. Just because you're born into something where it's like, well, I've got a bad name. I've got a bad last name. Everybody knows that my family's, never done the right thing, always a bunch of this or that, whatever. But you can change that. You can start to show a difference. Just because nobody else in your family has done a certain thing doesn't mean you can't. But we have an opportunity. I remember that when my father was speaking to me that night, he quoted my grandfather, his dad. And he said that when he was growing up, his dad told him, son, the ring name is a good name in the community. Don't ever shame that name. You keep that name right. And that's something, if we passed it down from generation to generation, that's a good thing. But as we are here on earth with a family name, if we are believers, we are a part of the family of God. We're all brothers and sisters and part of the family of God. But what are we doing out here that can cause shame to the name of Christ? We can say we go to church on Sundays but live like the devil during the week. We can be dishonest. We can do all these things that are not Christ-like, and we shame the name of Christ, the name of Jesus, because we say we're a follower. But just like if my son would go out and do something wrong, it would make me upset. Not that just he did something wrong, but that's a reflection on me. That's a reflection, because we're family, that's a reflection on my name. Same thing that was with my dad. And I can tell you a funny story now that goes back to something I'll tell on my son. See, my son was a challenge for me. He'd lived with his mom, and he came to live with me when he was 11. I thought, this is the greatest thing ever. He's going to be here. We're going to enjoy it. We enjoyed a lot of different things and still do to this day. But I was at my kennels one morning, and I heard a siren. And those of you that have been to my place, you realize I live down a gravel path, 3/4 of a mile off of a paved road. If two cars meet, somebody's got to back up and find a spot. There's only 3 houses on my street. And so I heard this siren, and I thought, what in the world is going on Mount Gilead Road? And it would just go whoop, whoop. And I was like, where is that coming from? And I started walking toward the sound, and all of a sudden there was a person from the sheriff's department that was walking around my gate coming to meet me. And he said to me, Are you Mr. Ring? I said, I'm David. He said, do you own a red Chevy, I forget what it was now, Tahoe or whatever, red Chevy truck? And I said, oh my goodness, what's he done now? Because it was in my name, but it was my son. And my son, we laugh about it now, is so funny that he was this silly, really. I had some fun with him, but he went to this location where the county had cleaned off a spot where a bunch of bamboo had grown. And he decided that, according to him, some friend of his told him it's a good place to do a donut. Just go up there and just do some donuts and cut up and have a good time. The problem was there was a sign there that said, under surveillance, cameras in use. There was one pine tree beside this road that had a trail camera on it. Stevie Wonder could have seen the trail camera, but for some reason, my son did not see that. And so he went out there and was cutting donuts just as pretty as you please, mud flying up in the air. The pictures came back crystal clear. It showed the decals on the back of his window. It showed the mud flying up and the tag plain as day. Well, my son was at school when this officer showed up. Little small town. Everybody knows about the school. And matter of fact, guy said, yeah, my daughter goes over there. I said, well, would you do me a favor? Would you go over there and ask for him to come out and put him in the back of the police car and scare the mess out of him? And I can assure you, he said, well, if he'll just clean it up and fix it back and re-sew it down, they're not going to press charges. I said, I understand, but he doesn't know that. He's going to do all that by hand. So he went over there to the school, scared my son, not as bad as I would have scared him, but he did scare him. And so my son called me. You know, when your kids call you, it's always funny to listen to their voice, especially, I give you kids some advice if any kids are watching. Most of the time when your parents ask you a question, they already know the answer. So it's best to tell the truth because they already know the answer to the questions. So he called me up and he said, Dad. I said, yeah, what's going on, bud? He said, you're going to be real upset. I said, oh, what's going on? Well, see, a bunch of other kids told me, and I said, what happened? Well, I cut some donuts on a place, and they had a camera in use, and the sheriffs come over here to the school, and they put me in the back of the car, and I got to get this taken care of because if I don't, they're saying I could go to jail. And I said, really? I said, tell me a little more about it. So he told me. I said, let's meet over there. So we went over there, and I told him, I said, you're going to take care of this. You're going to fix every rut on this place, and you're going to do it by hand with a rake and a shovel and a 5-gallon bucket. And you're going to take your money, and you're going to go buy some seed, and you're going to seed it back down. So Saturday morning, that's where you're going to be. So Saturday morning, I was going to run some dogs, but before I did, I loaded him up. We put the rake and the shovel and a 5-gallon bucket in the back of the truck. And I took him over there right at daylight, and I dropped him off. And I said, I'll be back around lunchtime. He didn't have a vehicle. I just left him there. And so at lunchtime, I'd run with my buddy David Russell. So at lunchtime, I come back. I said, you want to go to town and get something to eat? He said, yeah. So I went to McDonald's, picked him up a burger, and said, I got to make a stop right here. Stopped by, saw what he was doing. He said, all right, well, here's your burger and your stuff. I said, I'll be back around 4 or 5 o'clock to get you, and you need to get those ruts down there. I didn't put those ruts in, Dad. I said, I don't care if you put them in or not. You're going to fix them. You're the one that got caught. You're going to fix them all. What I was doing is I was trying to instill in him the fact that he needed to straighten out his name, and he needed to straighten out the ring name, and that he had brought some shame upon the ring name is what I was trying to do the whole thing for. He got it fixed, and took him 2 weekends, but he got it fixed, and everything got taken care of, and we laugh about it now, though I didn't find it funny at the time. But you have to do what you have to do to straighten your name out. When bad things happen, you got to straighten them out. You see, I have a saying in this big old world, and I'll cut this thing off here because I've gone a little longer than I wanted to. When problems arise, the problem is not the problem. It's what you do to take care of the problem. That's really the problem. Things can come about, things can happen, things are going to arise, but you have to take care of the problem. And the manner in which you do that is going to determine whether or not you keep your name straight. Sometimes it's going to cost you money. Sometimes it may not actually be your fault, but no matter what happens, you got to do your best to keep your name in good standing, because remember, a good name is rather to be chosen than riches. I hope this has been a blessing to you, and I hope that you will work hard at whatever it is that you're doing, whether it be the name of your kennel that you're trying to get out there, whether it's a beagle that you've got to keep the name of yourself right. But first and foremost, keep your name straight with those around you, with your family, and teach them by example to get their name, and teach them what an important thing it is to have a good name. If everybody in the world was working hard to keep their name straight, we wouldn't be seeing a lot of this nonsense that goes on every day. God bless y'all. Have a great day.